Okay, Trans Am fans, time for another interview and time to learn about one of our drivers, and it is the number 88, Cameron Parsons from California, from Hanford, California, and a man who's been taking part in our E-Championship and races in the West Coast Championship. Cameron, welcome to the show, and thanks for joining us. And I believe I've got the right car behind me, have I?
Yes, that's correct. It looks beautiful too.
Well, you've got all your new sponsors on. How have you been enjoying the eSports Championship?
I am loving it so far. It's just like it's such a mix out there of drivers and experience, because it's like we've got some masters in Trans Am that have never touched any sort of esports or just online racing, and then we've also got the flip side of guys like me that are kind of new to both Trans Am and I just used my simulator more as a hobby, and this is the most serious racing I've done on that before. And then of course we've got some of the guest like pro e-racers on here too that are kind of wiping the floor with some of us. So it's been really cool. It's fun having the variety that we have out there. It's a little bit of a wild west.
Yeah.
That opening lap is kind of a scary one, but after the field kind of thins out, I've had some good opportunities to have some really good wheel-to-wheel races out there.
So being from California, how was it to go to Riverside in yesteryear last weekend?
Yeah, it halfway felt like home. I mean, it's not too far from me, but the problem is that me and that track did not exist at the same time. But I've heard plenty of stories about it and seen photos from my dad and actually our crew guy Terry, who used to visit there all the time. And he's got a bunch of photos from it just on these slides that he's been showing us. So it was really cool to be able to talk to them and just be like, check this out. I get to kind of relive a part of history by driving on this track that those guys used to.
Now,
And
I read in your bio that you've grown up at least following the sim side of things, i.e., games, as a kid. So,
yeah.
Can you remember what you first started playing when it all started happening?
My very first one was probably it's going to be a toss-up between either Need for Speed 2 Special Edition, and I loved racing the Ferrari F50 in that, or the Ford Indigo, I remember, or IndyCar Racing 2 from Papyrus, back where they had Paul Page actually do the initial intro to it. And I had this awful, just little like non-force feedback. I don't even know if they even had force feedback wheels back then. This little Thrustmaster wheel that must have been, like 6 inches in diameter. So that was way back when.
Well, now you're a big child like me, and got maybe a little bit more money in your pocket. What's your rig these days?
Yeah, the toys get a little bit more serious and unfortunately a little more expensive, but it's mine actually sits right next door to me here. I can show you. So this is my workspace I'm sitting in, and so just about 3 steps away is my rig. So this right here is a Fanatec Club Sport 2.5 rim. Down at the pedals, which you cannot see, is their Club Sport pedals, Club Sport shifter. I got a 32-inch curved monitor specifically for the series, and then it's all sitting in a Obuto cockpits that I'm hoping to replace soon with a Sparco one. And seeing the success of like Tyler and Josh and those guys, I own an Oculus Rift that was in storage because I'm in the middle of a move. So I was like, they're doing pretty well. I got to dust that thing off and see what they're on about. And it's been a pretty big help for me, at least.
Now, you told me at the beginning of this E-Championship that I asked for some bios and some info, and you were great. You sent me info saying, I'm in a bit of a rush at the moment because I'm in an apartment and that's all I've got, and we're building a house. So tell me how, when this started, when we went to Laguna Seca, tell me your situation.
Yeah, so we were just coming off of a season last year in November, and my wife and I decided to sell our house in Orange County in Southern California, and we moved up to Hanford, close to family here. And so we're getting things ready for the season. Then, of course, February, March, pandemic starts to hit hard, and then everything gets canceled. The Esports Championship picks up, and me and my wife are in this little 600 square foot apartment while our house is being built. And there's not much room for much in here. And when the Esports Championship got announced, I was like, oh no, I got to reassemble my simulator that's in storage. There's no room to put it in here. So I rebuilt it at my parents' house did our first race at Lime Rock out there, just stuffed away in the corner in storage. And then they announced the series, and I'm like, I got to spend time to practice on this thing. We got to make some room. So my wife was kind enough to move her desk and her work area to the other side of our, like, one living room here. And I stuffed this thing in the corner. And so now I just jump out of this seat and into that one whenever I want to practice.
If I've learned one thing from this E-Championship is the true meaning of love. Because I think you and several, well, maybe all 30 plus of our drivers have had very, very good relationships with their wives, because you are basically taking over the house. You're also like in a zone where how much practice are you doing?
So I try to, so if we're racing on Saturday, I try to get at least 3 or 4 nights of practice, where it's just, I finish work at about 5:30. I jump on for about 2 or 3 hours, 2 or 3 nights out of the week, I'd say. And I mean, yeah, like I said, thankfully for my wife, she's been super supportive, and she's been putting up with me for 8 years in the whole racing thing. So I think we're pretty secure. So when I say, like, I'm done with work, we have a quick dinner, and I'm like, I'm gonna go jump on the sim and practice.
Problem with that, though,
yeah,
but the problem with that, though, is that she's going to watch Netflix and everything else, and she's going to be up on all these series, and she's going to say, no, I'm not watching the first 5 episodes again. It's too bad you missed them. You're going to have to tune in now.
Yeah, I gotta catch up on them later. But I mean, she's been encouraging me to practice, which, I mean, to me, that's huge. Most I think would look at it and be just like, oh, you're gonna go play with your toys, whatever. But she's like, you should go practice. You should get comfortable with this track. And maybe she thinks I need a little more practice. Maybe that's my problem.
So how have you been getting on? You're 13th at the moment in the championship, but
Yeah.
Having said that, with 3 rounds to go, you could easily be in the top 10. I think you're only about 20 points off that, and it's very close actually in the midfield.
Yeah, that's been my goal from the start. I just wanted to hit top 10s in this, and if I can end up top 10 in the championship, like, that would be golden. Our last race, or race before last, I should say, when I actually qualified 9th, then I was just like, holy crap, I've got a chance. I can start hitting this. I've been getting better and better as I spend more time on this thing. But like I said, first lap at these events, it's a little bit of a Wild West situation, and so I'm just trying to stay clean and stay out of trouble. Sometimes I think I played a little overly cautious, and then I end up paying for it, get freight trained by me. But as I get quicker and quicker, I think I can hopefully find a home in the top 10 by the end of this.
But, interestingly enough, though, like Josh Hurley and a few of the other drivers, you use sims and you help people to learn to drive as well. So tell us a little bit about that side of things and how useful it is for new drivers to be able to get on a sim.
Yeah. I mean, so racing is very expensive, as everybody knows. And I got to a point, I was racing open wheel cars before I got into the Trans Am car, and it kind of got to a point where, our checking accounts were running on empty, our pockets were empty, and I was like, I need to find a way to make some money.
What did you run?
Going racing.
What did you run?
I was running Formula Mazda in the Formula Car Challenge here on the West Coast.
Uh-huh.
So eventually, what I ended up doing was I built my own racing team, Parsons Racing. And I had a car and I had a driver that was interested in renting from me. So we started, coaching him, providing trackside support. And then we had a couple more drivers come on for races here and there until we turned into a 2-car team running people. So I've been coaching them in that car. And then eventually when I got my own sim, I've actually been doing some driver training on the simulator as well. Because I've found huge value in it, and I think they've found value in it, especially when you're going to be driving a new track for the first time. It builds that muscle memory, it builds those visual cues that you just absolutely rely on. And honestly, right now, I've never spent more time on a sim in such a small small window. And I can't wait to get back into the Camaro, because I feel like just all the things I've been tweaking, this is so competitive racing with these guys on the sim. It puts me on high alert on all the things that I'm doing from the cockpit here. Now I want to jump in my real car and try out some of these things, because it's made me so much more conscious about my inputs on the wheel and the pedals. And now I'm thinking, there's some things I think I'm learning here that would translate over to the track. So I got to get back out there and see what applies.
See, that's interesting because, I've talked to a lot of drivers, as you know, and everybody's got a different story about what sims can and can't do. And, Mark Miller says, you can learn a lot on a sim, but but it's not the same. Boris says, you know, unless I've got the feel in my butt and the wind in my hair, so to speak, I just really can't get the feel for it. And it is two very different types of racing. But
Absolutely.
tell me what, I'll ask you a chicken and egg question. If I had never raced cars or go-karts or anything, and I came to you as a 16-year-old, would you put me in a sim or would you put me in a car? For, you know, how would you go? What's the chicken and the egg go?
If we had the option, like if we had the car and the track on the sim, I would absolutely put you in the sim first. It's so difficult to learn two things at once. You know, if I've got a car I feel at home in, I can learn a new track in that. Or if I've got a track I've driven a dozen cars in, I can learn a new car on that. But for somebody that's brand new, I mean, like I said, that's a tool you use to at least build the visual cues and the muscle memory so that when you go out there for the first time, you can be like, oh, this is familiar. I know which way to turn when the straightaway is over. And, you know, I agree with those guys. It's a very different thing. It's a very different feeling. But still, the concepts of the techniques and the physics apply. So Forza, for example, they actually have a Formula Mazda in there that you can drive, which I found super cool. And so I decided I'm going to see how well it works to take my real life setup and put it on that car in the game. And it was completely terrible. It didn't work at all. So, you know, there is definitely a distinction of what works in the game and what works in real life. But still, when you get to those core elements about just your driving inputs and how much, you know, trail braking pays off and how you're going to try and achieve that car rotation mid-corner, those concepts still apply. You might not feel it like you would in a real car, but you still got to drive it like you would a real car. So
yeah,
it translates over.
Yeah, and you know what? It's interesting. I've done a lot of drive schools, rally schools, even motorcycle race schools. And, you know, what I found is, you know, as the commentator, you always get a chance to do these great things. And you try to learn, but your adrenaline is going so quick and it's so exciting and it's so new. And you're excited that the learning process is really hard because you're so enveloped by this new sensation of both speed and the equipment that you're in that you're not familiar with, that I think I would learn more on a sim because I'm not risking my life and I'm not doing that fight or flight thing where my life is depending on it and I'm just trying to hang on, as it were, and trying to get used to a very powerful machine either way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I do lots of coaching at like track day events too, where I get, you know, some complete newbies that brought out, you know, a Miata or a BMW M4 or a Lamborghini, and I like riding along in the ones that are in the Miatas. But when they first get in the car and when they get on the track, I mean, you see their eyes just, you know, pop open, and you can see their, you know, fingers just, you know, trying to tear that steering wheel off. And what happens is people get super tense, and so it's like things I try to teach to people is to be extremely analytical of your driving and to relax. Because if you're not relaxed, you can't analyze what the heck is going on or what feedback the car is driving. When you jump into the sim, all that pressure is gone and you can drive around the track and just like really analyze and really think about it because you're not getting all this turbulence. You're not getting all this noise distracting you. I shouldn't say distracting, but, you know, throwing you off or building up pressure. So you can just really feel how much input am I doing. You can pay attention to that stuff a lot easier on the sim first. So I love it for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. I did a race school at Barber with Kevin Schwantz, a bike school. And, you know, I've known Kevin for years and followed his career and commentated on his racing. And I came in after the first session and I said, how am I getting on? And he said, man, you look so tight out there. You look like your life depends on it. And I said, yeah, it's scaring the hell out of me. It's a big, powerful motorcycle. And he said, you know what? Just go out there and do it like you do your commentary. Very relaxed, just having fun. And he said, the more you relax, the better and faster you'll be. And the minute I went back out again and sort of put that in my head, I was so much better. And you're right. You know, hanging on for dear life is not going to make you fast.
Yes. It pays dividends. Yeah.
So we've got 3 rounds left of the E-Championship, and then we go back to Mid-Ohio. What's your plan both? Well, you said you want to make the top 10. We've got a few interesting courses coming up. Where's the best chance of you getting some good points to try to get you into the top 10?
Yeah, we were saying earlier, Spa coming up this weekend. I'm doing everything I can to make that track, also because it's just one of my favorite tracks to
Sure.
watch and to drive on the video games. And I haven't tried it in Assetto Corsa yet, but I'm hoping that what I've learned on the other sims I can translate over because I think I could do all right there. But I'm going to be away at Laguna Seca for a race coaching a driver, so I'm trying to find out if I can find a sim locally that I could still participate in this race on. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to that race if I can attend. And then outside of that, we're still, you know, making some final tweaks on my Camaro. Hopefully, we're going to be dusting it off for some testing here soon before the West Coast finally gets its chance to officially start. But I'm really looking forward. I'm hoping I can make Portland. I'm not sure right now, but Thunderhill is a definite on the list, and I've got some unfinished business out there after how we kicked off last year at that track. Blew second gear out there during practice, so I've got to finish that race this year.
Well, let me ask you this. You just mentioned finding a sim. SSI
Yeah.
Racing School. How does that work, and what's the setup there, and how does it differ from what you've got at home?
Yeah, so these guys are really cool. I met them a couple years ago, and so what they do is driver training on a simulator, a very realistic simulator, and they've turned it into a mobile unit now too, which is cool. So they can take their rig out to like the local K1 Speed or different go-karting race events. So they're based in Northern California, and so they do like driver training, just like you've got a coach in your ear, guiding you along the way. They've got all kinds of different cars, all kinds of different tracks, and they can tune everything up to be as realistic as possible and to kind of match your driving needs. And I know that there are a number of drivers on the West Coast that have been using them for training, like SCCA events and Formula Car Challenge events, and in starting this esports championship, they actually helped me out in getting all my stuff tuned. It turns out that my setup for my wheel and pedals was just completely backwards. So we got on a Zoom meeting, and he was just like, "This is all wrong. This is all wrong. Flip that on, flip that off." And then all of a sudden, I was like, "Oh my goodness, I can feel the car!" And I got like a half second or 3/4 of a second faster immediately. So they've been helping me with this at the same time.
That's pretty cool. Now,
Yeah.
I don't think you've had any weight penalties for any mistakes that you've made, but the problem you've got is that you're carrying extra weight because in the back of your virtual Trans Am car, you've got a Zizo folding bike, I believe.
Yes, yes. This is a new sponsor we picked up just this year, actually. So these guys are really cool. I actually found them because I was looking for a solution to get around the pits. I still, my trailer can't fit a golf cart or utility cart in there, so we get around on bicycles, and even the mountain bikes have been taking up too much space. So I just did a Google search, folding bikes, and then these guys turns out to be like about the highest quality bang for your buck folding bikes that you can get. So, we can pack this up, throw it in the trailer. I've actually fit it in the trunk. I throw it in the trunk of my WRX all the time when I go to race events, and it's just in a couple seconds it folds up to this just weird looking contraption that you can fit in a suitcase almost.
Really?
And then when it's time to unpack and go, it's only 23, 24 pounds. Just unfold the thing, lock everything in position, and you're riding around. So it's been super nice and convenient getting around. I love it.
Well, listen, we're talking about sponsors. I've got the car behind me,
Yeah.
KW, obviously. What else have we got? We got Quick Jack and K. Well, let's start with those. Tell me about that. I've seen the SSI there.
Yeah.
But tell me how you picked up them and what they do.
Yeah, so QuickJack was also a pretty recent one. They got on board just last year. It's another one where it's just like, I've got a problem and I need a solution. Back then, I was working at D Sport Magazine full time. So I was a writer and a driver for them. I did lots of the like track testing and wrote lots of technical articles for them. And so cars are just going up and down nonstop. And then, especially in the racing world, in between sessions on track, the car's going up to do checks or whatever, and then you drop it back down and go. So I'm just like, man, taking a car, for one, I can't fit a lift at home, especially now that I'm in an apartment. and then two, trying to put the car on 4 jack stands, it works, but I never felt comfortable doing it.
Right.
So with the quick jack, it's basically these two kind of portable heavy duty lifts that you slide underneath each side of the car, and it hooks up to this motorized unit. You just push a button, and in about 30 seconds you've got the car up at about 22 inches off the ground, I think. And you've got a couple different levels, so it's just like, are we changing tires? Are we changing brake pads? Are we doing something more serious? Just lift it up, get under, and go. And you should check out the videos that they post where people are asking about how safe it is. They've got some pretty funny ones of just how much weight can it hold, or can we like physically knock a car off of one? Can we throw one off a roof or something like that? Just like all these
And,
weird strength tests.
and is it portable?
It's portable. We pack it in the trailer and we bring it to all of our races now.
Wow.
So that makes it especially nice. They've got hangers for it now too, or if you want to hang it on the trailer wall or the garage wall. And so when it's hanging, I mean, it's only sticking a couple inches off the wall. So it's, takes a very little space. So they've been a lifesaver for this car. The Formula car weighed about 1,300 pounds. This car weighing about 2,800. Takes a little bit more work to get it up in the air.
KW Suspension I've known for many years. In fact,
Yeah.
they were a big sponsor out in Asia when I was doing GT racing out there. But what's your connection with them?
Yeah, I'm super pumped to have them on board. So they actually are just down the road from me now, which is nice. So they're about 45 minutes away. They're just based in Clovis. And so you may have seen or heard about the wreck that I had at Sonoma last year. And so it was a nasty one. Something broke on the front left corner. We suspect that it was the A-arm snapped, which just sucks. After that, just had no control, went into the wall. And we're rebuilding the car, putting a bunch of stuff together, and I'm looking at the dampers, and I'm just thinking, maybe this is our opportunity to swap them all out. Maybe we should try something that nobody's really tried lately in a series like this, because KW is most famous for like the BMW and Porsche applications.
Yeah.
And so I was thinking, oh, that could be cool. We could have support just down the road and introduce them to this series where it's just like completely left field, but they've got the technology to prove themselves. And so it's up to me as a driver to, kind of fulfill that expectation. So it all kind of just came together talking to the guys out there. And so now we're going to be renting their dampers, their competition two ways on the car for this year. And so we're going to be kicking off with some testing in just a couple weeks here. And I'm pretty excited to see what we can do with that on the car.
Now, like I mentioned, you're on the West Coast, and I think in my notes I made a note that last year at Laguna you had a really sensational run right from the back to the front.
Yeah. It's man, I got a little good passing practice that weekend. Yeah, with that group. When we had the East Coasters join us, I think Laguna Seca was my second full race ever, because I don't count Thunder Hill because the car broke down during practice. So we got to do Fontana, where I took third place, and then Laguna mixed in with the East Coast guys. I was just terrified. So Fontana was awesome because we had I think that was one where we started last or second to last and then brought it to the podium. So we had just loads of electrical issues on the car. I missed qualifying because we're still resolving an alternator. We actually had to swap the alternator out, borrowed one from somebody else that turned out to also be faulty. So we had to buy one from, I think it was David Smith's team, which ended up being the guy that I was duking it out with throughout the entire race. And I was just so grateful for that weekend. My crew was just so on top of things. And I gave QuickJack huge props because the car spent so much time in the air and then back on the ground to test stuff out and then find out it didn't work, so we put it back up. And it was just one of those ultimate payoffs. It was such a stressful weekend, and then we spent that entire race just battling side by side with David Smith. And I'm just like, I'm new to this car. This thing feels massive compared to the Formula car I just came out of. Do we have enough space to get through this corner? And like, we made it through, spending so much time side by side without rubbing paint at all. And so I didn't quite get the second place that he got, but I'm just thrilled to have gotten on the podium for that one. It was such a good race.
So what's your plan? I mean, like you say, you're fairly new to Trans Am, and you started in open wheels, and it's interesting. I mean, early 30s, you've got another 40, 50 years left of Trans Am racing if we go by the age of some of the guys we've got out there. So you've got a long way ahead of you. But would you like to stick with Trans Am, or are you looking to kind of use this to go further and go into maybe GT racing or something?
Yeah, I mean, I'll try and condense the story as much as I possibly can. So when I started in go-karts, I was 11 years old, and I had the dreams and hopes of like, oh, I'm definitely going to be an IndyCar or an F1 star. And as I got older and older and I started reaching out to teams to see how expensive it was going to be, then reality just started slapping me in the face. And so I I started exploring other avenues. I actually played around with some World Challenge stuff with the touring cars, which was actually a ton of fun. But when it came time, I don't know why, but just this last year or 2 years ago, my dad and I are like, we got to find something that we can do. Like my goal has always been to just race something that's considered pro level car. The problem is trying to do something that I can afford. And so I started looking at, different types of fender car classes. And then I find out that this stuff is so much more affordable than open wheel. And on top of that, it's so much easier to sell the sponsorship. They're cars that the audiences can relate to. There's a lot more room for branding. I find that the events have just, they're super fan friendly. So it's just, positives left and right. And when we came to the Trans Am series, and I saw just how massive and popular the TA2 class in particular was, we're checking items off the list. It's just like, oh, fiberglass body, LS3 engine, tube frame. We're looking at it, we're just like, all of this stuff is repairable. Like, we don't have to send it to Italy if it needs a patch or something like that. We can repair it at home. Parts can be fabricated. And so, a lot of it is a lot of work, and racing is not cheap. But when I compare it to the likes of other pro racing options, like, it was just, like I said, checking off all the boxes. So if I can find a way to make this work long term, honestly, like, I look around and I see other pro race classes and pro racing groups. To me, nothing looks as competitive as the TA2 class. So it's like, if you want to flex on other drivers and show your skill, it's like, that's the place to do it. If you can do well at that level in that class, it looks like you're ready to drive anything. So that's where I want to end up doing well.
Listen, while I've got you, I got to find out, because like I said, you're in that midfield pack with Scott Lagacy and Archer, Kent Vaccaro. Who are the tough guys? Who don't you like racing? Not don't you like racing, but who is tough to overtake, or tough if they're behind you? Who do you look out for?
Yeah, well, the last couple, actually this last race at Riverside, I had a ton of fun racing with Scott Borchetta.
All right.
So both of us got found some hiccups at the start of the opening laps. Both of us are trying to be careful, and then we get bumped to do a little bit of off-roading and find our way back in line. And my wife was standing over my shoulder watching, and I watched him make a couple passes, and I was just like, oh, he's super clean and he's fast. I'm gonna follow him through the field. And it paid off. Just every time he passed a car, I followed him right through. So him next time, I would very much like to finish ahead of. And also Nick Rosito is another one, also on the West Coast. I mean, you've seen how well he's been doing on all the sim racing stuff. Like, to me, the guy's a pro when you put him in these sim cockpits. And him and I have been doing lots of practicing during the week together. Earlier on, we were even running our own servers where just him and I were practicing. And he's got this stuff figured out, and he's been showing me a lot of the ropes. But eventually, again, I'd like to get up there and actually dice in with him. I want to get to a point where I catch up with teacher and try and duke it out with him.
I think that's what I've enjoyed about it. Is it just as in the real world, you see Ernie Francis Jr. or any one of the top guys, and if you see them in real life, they're like, "Hey man, I saw you had a crash. Is there what do you need?" Because Ernie's great at that. It's been true. It's been true of the E series too, because everybody, was thrown at it, and everybody had different equipment, but everybody's been really helpful on the Discord and stuff. Everybody's been sharing tips and tricks, and it's been nice to see the community come together.
Yeah, it's been really cool because I'm closely watching the Discord chats in between the races and stuff. I want to see who's trash talking who and all that. But it's been nice seeing, especially all the guys in the top 10, like Cameron Lawrence, Ernie Francis, Tyler Casera, Josh Hurley, all those guys. They're crazy fast. Thomas Merrill too. They're crazy fast. They're within hundreds of each other nonstop. And you expect that when drivers are being that competitive with each other and battling so close and so hard, you would expect that they'd be just going for the neck after each race, trying to kill each other. But honestly, the amount of respect and how much information sharing that they've been providing in our chats to the whole field, I really got to commend them for that. They've been awesome about just being clean and friendly throughout this whole thing.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because there was quite a lot of trash talk after Riverside. And interestingly enough, our TA2 champion, Mark Miller, was getting into trouble. Was getting some trash talk towards him, and clearly whoever was having a go at Mark, and we don't need to discuss that, but he doesn't
Yeah.
know Mark because I do know Mark, and Mark does not put up with that. And
Yeah.
if you met Mark in the real world, you wouldn't be trash talking him.
Yeah, yeah. I can't say that everybody's been squeaky clean. They've been nice for the most part, but honestly, I've just been pulling out the popcorn and watching when anybody does have some beef that they gotta take out with somebody. It's yeah, it's fun, and I'm sure I kind of hope that some of these rivalries will carry out in real life too. It's just everybody wants to prove themselves here, and I just can't wait to see all that. All that just suppressed rage and the need to get out and drive a real car. I can't wait to see that become unleashed when we go back to racing in real life again.
So, Cameron, where will you go back to real world racing? Will you be coming to Mid-Ohio or no? Because you're West Coast. So when were you hoping to get out there again?
Yeah. Like I said, I'm planning to do some testing just in a couple weeks here. But our opening race is at Portland. And then right after that, the very next weekend is going to be at Thunder Hill. So Portland, I've got my fingers crossed, but Thunder Hill, you'll certainly see me there.
The one thing I've learned about Cameron Parsons already is he's a budding guitarist and pianist. So if the racing world doesn't work out for him, you can see the guitar in the background. He's ready to go. So you've got a big interest in music, yeah?
Oh yeah. I back when I was in Orange County, we used to go to concerts all the time, and well, I'd be making my way down there on a regular basis if it only wasn't for this pandemic hitting us. But eventually, I want to get back out there. But yeah, in my spare time, with the whole quarantine thing, I ended up buying a new drum machine and another synthesizer, and I've been really trying to talk myself out of buying a new loop station recently too. But yeah, so I play mostly piano. I play around with synthesizers, some guitar, and just whenever I get bored and want to screw around, I just lay down some tracks and see if I could produce anything that sounds good.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Well, listen, last thing, I just want to make sure that everybody knows you're the 88, the one that's behind me right now with the yellow and black.
Yeah.
And it's Parsons Racing with KW and QuickJack as the sponsors and SSI. Yep. Currently, like I said, 13th. Am I right in saying that? 13th in the championship. Yep.
Sounds right. Yeah.
Yeah, actually on equal points with Lawless Allen. That's not going to stand. He's only a whippersnapper.
Oh man, that's a tough nut to crack. But another one I'd be pretty happy about getting ahead of. But I've tailed him a couple times. The dude is quick. It'll take some work to try and get around him.
Well, I think we should, at the end of this E-Championship, I think we should have a special race for all these patient wives, and I include yours in that, because they've clearly allowed you to have way too much fun and get on with being, the big boys with their big toys, because that's what this is.
Yeah. Oh, she's driven on it a couple times too.
Aha! Now we're talking.
Yeah.
All right, we've got the next Michelle Abate coming then.
Right? Yeah, we've been teaching her some manual transmission on there. We've had my dad on the sim before, and I don't know if I've broken it to my dad yet, but my wife's been faster on some tracks than he was.
Oh, we won't make that. But I'll cut that out of the final thing.
Okay,
no, I won't. Hey, well, listen, Cameron. Best of luck in the last 3 rounds of the E-Trans Am Championship presented by Pirelli. And wish you luck. And I really hope that we can get this car behind me up into that top 10 overall. And like you say, dicing with Scott Borchetta. I think that's a smart move because he is putting in the laps. I was talking to him the other day. Yeah. He really is putting in the laps and really trying to make a mark on this E-Championship. And I think he's doing a great job.
Yeah, he's doing great. If he could just throw me a rope to help me keep up with him, that would be ideal.
Well, practice makes perfect, as they say. So you've got, well, how much do you think you're going to put in for the next race? How many hours do you think?
Since we're winding down to, the finale or the final races of the season, it's probably going to get pretty bad. I expect, from clocking out at work at 5 or 5:30, it's just going to be simulator to bedtime. I want to clock in some top 10s for these final races, so as much as I can possibly do.
You know what? The trouble is, though, whenever I do that kind of thing, or whenever I get like totally intense into a game or a video, that I'm so wide awake, but I'm so like frazzled by the time I get off that I can never go to sleep.
Yeah, well, that's when you jump back on the sim and just do it some more.
There you go. Hey, well, Cameron, thank you so much for spending some time with us. Best of luck at the next round and the last few rounds of this Trans Am Championship. And best of luck on the West Coast. I hope it all works out for you and you get the results you want.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.